So today my guest is Robert. Thanks for joining me, Robert. Do you want to just introduce yourself to everybody?
Okay, how long have I got? Kidding. Starting with a sense of humor. Okay, obviously my name is Robert Kaiser. Well, I don't know what you want to know, but 55 years.
How did you get into this
Wow.
um this role of
Yes,
can I, do I call it work or do I call what do I say?
I
It's
don't know. It's a passion. It's work. It's an algorithm, a combination of everything, I guess. But
mm,
if it is work, then it's truly work that I genuinely love. So it can. I mean, I'm one of the
yeah,
guys who's blessed, or one of the people who's blessed who goes to work and actually enjoys what I do. It doesn't matter how
yeah.
complex and challenging some of the subjects are at times, but I love doing it, so that's good. Right.
So what do you do?
Well, that's a long, long story. It really is genuinely a long answer. I try to keep it very, very short. So obviously, I'm not from the UK to give that away, in case you struggle with my accent. But I was born in Germany, lived in Germany for around 30 years thereabouts. Spent a lot of time in the latter years overseas in security, working for the German government, and in private security and some interesting stuff, dealing with a lot of
Mm.
challenging environments and complex environments. And when I was about 31 years old, I came to the UK, moved to North Yorkshire in the beautiful Yorkshire Dales. Lived in North Yorkshire.
So you're not far from us then, are
Well,
you?
the story isn't finished yet. Let me finish. But no, you're right. Up to that point, you're right. But there's a twist to it. So anyway, yeah, I lived in the North Yorkshire in the Yorkshire Dales for almost 21 years, in fact. And I absolutely loved every minute. Spent a lot of times in the lakes and in the North York Moors and Yorkshire Dales. But then I set up a few companies, all specialized in security, safety related aspects. And about 3.5 years ago, my wife and me decided to say, listen, we need a better life-work balance. And because of the things I have been dealing with in the past, before I came to UK, my mental health was always at the best at all times. So we decided to move to
Mhm.
Italy 3.5 years ago, and I'm living on top of a mountain with my gorgeous wife, two gorgeous dogs, and three kittens. A bit
Oh,
of pride.
so you're actually in Italy. So you're in Italy
I'm
now?
on the I'm about 800 meter up in the middle of a mount on top of a mountain, in the heart of in Italy, yeah. But I am
Wow.
coming to England every 3 months. I'm going because all my better offices are based in Wetherby at Thorpe Arch. So every 3 months I go back for a week. But I've got 4 directors who are running the show there, so I'm just popping in every so often and
Wow.
be nice.
Wow. I weren't expecting
You
that.
see? Life's full of surprises.
It
Anyway,
is. So how did you get
yeah.
um into this? What are your actual businesses then? What are they that are over here?
Well, I was involved. We spent at a security company, which we sort of now stopped being operational. We got involved in more in creating and designing, engineering, producing, i.e., body armor, for example, for law enforcement, border force, immigration, customs, law enforcement, military. We are producing different kind of clothing, suicide prevention clothing or anti-ligature clothing for high secure mental health care facilities and psychiatric units all over the world. So we've got different kind of companies, different kind of equipment and clothing we are creating, uh, and all fitting the same mission statement, protecting human life basically, and mitigating the risk of injuries. So when I set up the company 15 years ago, I sort of retired from operational duties after being 20 years involved in some interesting stuff in security. And
Mm.
I decided, because there were too many moments when I wasn't sure if I'm going to come home one day or not. I was away 3 months at a time overseas in hostile environments. Um, it wasn't good for the marriage at the time. That ended up in divorce anyway. Never mind. So I made sacrifices from that point. So I ultimately decided when the time was to call it a day and use all my knowledge I had and my passion in terms of saving lives, protecting lives, mitigating life-threatening risks and threats in general, and create companies where I don't have to be away all the time, where I actually can be more at home. And I got remarried, lucky me, found love
Yeah.
again. And I promised
Oh.
myself that I look after this marriage in a slightly different way than I did before, where I prioritize my marriage rather than the business. Sorry for rambling on.
No, no, it's absolutely
Okay.
fine. It's fascinating.
Okay. Well,
Um,
that's the beginning.
so
Yeah.
so we wanted to touch upon the safety
Yes.
of women. Um, as you know, there's a national crisis
Yes.
going on with violence against women and girls.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you know, the large proportion of that is domestic abuse.
Yes.
Um, and you created a sort of a safety plan, didn't you?
Yeah.
That you sent me. You sent me over, didn't you, to how best to prepare
Yeah. Yeah.
um, if somebody is thinking about leaving um, a domestically violent relationship.
Yes, but that was a very, very abbreviated version, as you can imagine. As you know, the subject matter is very, very complex, and you will probably know more about the subject of domestic abuse itself more than I know. I know probably a lot about safety, security aspects, and how to protect yourself from life, threatening situations and individuals who are extremely hostile, intoxicated, or whatever it may be. So ultimately, I decided to write a book about it after being 30 years almost involved in the subject matter and having dealt with different incidents and individuals. We can talk about this in a second. What actually made me get involved in this specific subject field,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, ultimately, ended up writing a book 540 pages long and 111,000 words. So it's very difficult to wrap it up almost in a 6-7 point bullet points briefly discussed safety guide, if that makes sense.
mm,
But if there's one thing I've I talk about over and over again, it's actually recognizing the warning signs of abuse in the first place. Because if you
mm,
look at statistics, and statistic I always take with a pinch of salt, because I'm a guy with an intelligence background, so I take statistics very, very carefully. And there's, I
yeah,
mean, statistics can be manipulated by thousands of ways, so we can talk about that as well. But let's argue we've got
yeah,
1.5 to 1.7 million individuals, females in the UK suffering domestic abuse. That's a number people will sort of discuss. And the question is, how many of them actually know it, actually how many actually are aware that they are in an abusive relationship, or can we question the number and say, well, the number may be way higher because we haven't included women who are in a relationship but actually don't even know that that relationship is toxic or abusive. And and this is where the safety plan comes in. The number one, by a long shot, never mind. And people always talk about safety fans. Now, when I wrote my book, that is the very, very last chapter of it. There's literally 20 chapters, 111,000 words, and it's a last chapter. Very briefly talk about safety fans, because when it comes to that point, I think there are a lot of things you can do before that that help you mitigate that risk. And number one, in any kind of hostile environment, and your domestic environment may well be a hostile environment, is identifying the threat and understanding that you are under at risk. And a lot of individuals, I think, may not be aware of that. So it's really understanding all the things like now the manipulative behaviors of partners, and you will know them, and I will know them.
mm.
But I think
It's all those little behaviours that build up into that big incident.
yeah, but it's noticing it at the earliest possible stage. Like, and I'm not trying. I hope you do forgive me for too graphic, but if a woman is unconscious after a physical assault, well, that's the obvious part, and I would want to mean in a more respectful way that female is suffering domestic violence or domestic abuse. But there are so many very early indicators where a woman can say, "Hang on, maybe." I'm already in an abusive relationship, maybe there is a risk, and question on what can I do about it. Let me give you an example. It's a really good example. I love these kind of things. And I actually use my own wife, bless her soul, love her to bits. Okay. So manipulative behavior in terms of now, one of the manipulative behaviors that is really important or very dominant in domestic abuse relationship is inflicting guilt. Yeah. So a partner can constantly inflict guilt, and that makes you be in a domestic abuse relationship. But we all manipulate other people. So my wife, give you an example. I know I'm rambling on a bit. So we had a guest coming over, and my wife made dinner, and a lovely evening with our neighbor here. And then my wife made some cake, and he had a piece of cake. And before he left, my wife asked him, "Do you want a piece of cake to take home?" And he said no. And all she said, "Why didn't you like my cake?" And 5 minutes later, he left with a piece of cake. So my wife, as lovely, as gorgeous she is able to manipulate another human being to do something that he didn't want to do at all by inflicting guilt.
Mm.
So what I'm saying is that there's a difference between manipulative behavior as part of who we are in our day-to-day life. I sent a message to my wife yesterday. I was jumping on the podcast, and my building is where my office is. It's like 50 meters away from the house. So I was messaging my wife. So first of all, I love you dearly. Secondly, you're beautiful. And thirdly, is there any chance you can bring some coffee over? So technically, I used a manipulative strategy called charm to get what I want. Clearly, it didn't mean it that harmful, abusive way, and I was just a joke. But the point is, in a roundabout way, I use a manipulative behavior to get what I want. So it's important that human beings understand that if a partner manipulative towards me, because it's just how we are, human beings, we all do it, or had that person got a more hidden, a more sinister agenda, and that is critical. Because if my wife would have believed for one single second that I'm using this kind of manipulative behavior to get my cup of coffee, then she would have identified the level of risk she's in, and then she could take appropriate action, whatever the action is. We can discuss in a second. But what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way is we all manipulate people, but it's important that you identify when that behavior becomes sinister, hostile, or threatening. Are you with me? And the earlier you can figure it out, the earlier you can jump to plan B, which is your personal safety plan, whatever that is, from safety exit strategies to escape, and whatever it may be. You know what I mean? But first of all, we need to understand if there is abuse, if there is a threat. And I have met a lot of individuals who talk about the partners and never use the word abusive relationship or hostile relationship or toxic relationship. They just talk about a relationship. And I think what you're describing right now genuinely is an abusive relationship. So sorry but let me give you one more example. And I should be telling you that, but I'll just tell you anyway. So a few weeks ago, my wife got a call from a very close family member who was talking about another family member a bit further away. That family member is considering divorce right now, and she was expressing herself to the person my wife was talking to, and ultimately she dropped a sentence saying that I literally have got no money on my account at all. And I said to my wife straight away, do me a favor. I'm not paranoid. I'm not 24 hours woman safety, domestic abuse orientated. But I said, question that. Ask her why she's got no money, because clearly she's working. Then we figured out that actually her husband has maxed out her credit card and has got created £24,000 debt. So that was a woman who was absolutely happy married to up to a year ago, but she would never say I'm in an abusive relationship. So I said, listen, do you mind if I speak with her? And I said, listen, hey, just to give you a heads up here now, you do whatever you think is right for you. But that situation, in my opinion, and please forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, the situation you're referring to, you're describing, is a little bit more serious and complex than you believe it is right now. This is no longer about, do I get divorced or not, or just leave my partner or not, my husband. You are actually in an abusive relationship. Because if your your husband is maxing out your credit card without you knowing it, and created £24,000 debt without
Mhm.
you knowing it, there's a problem.
Mhm.
So
And very, very common. And very, very common.
absolutely. So that's what I'm saying
Yeah.
now. In terms of personal safety advice, I mean, I'm being asked, the first thing is, recognize the threat, recognize the risk. And a lot of individuals are not. Women or men, it doesn't matter. In any environment we are in any day-to-day environment we might face, but specifically domestic abusive relationship, the number one key is you can't deal, you can't fix, you can't control or protect or look after your safety or security or mitigate a threat if you're not aware that there is a threat. The first of all is being aware there is a risk. Then you can deal with that. Are you with that?
Yeah, it's all about educating, isn't it? There's a lot of educating to be done, and that's not just for individuals that don't realise that they're being abused. There's a lot of professionals don't recognise it as well.
Absolutely.
So I've sat in environments where, I've been in environments where there's been a number of professionals around a table making
Yeah.
decisions around a child, for
Yeah.
instance, and they've not recognised that they can't see it. They just can't see it, and I think that having lived through it and having seen both sides of the fence with it, I can just see it's clear as day to
Yeah.
me. But I just want to go back to that, what you've just said, actually, because interestingly, um, I think for me now, it's kind of like because I am hyper vigilant with everything,
Yeah.
it almost does a complete U-turn because I sort of think everything's a red flag, if that makes sense. Having having lived it, it is so scary to go, and this is another thing we don't really talk about much, actually entering a new relationship
Okay. Yeah.
as a survivor of domestic
Yeah.
abuse, because every little thing that is, and it comes as part of trauma as
Yeah.
well. Trauma is very complex and a lot of people don't know how that works, and it you second guess everything anyway once you've experienced it. So it's really difficult for that new partner as well to try and get the head round why you were thinking certain things, why you behave in a certain way.
Yeah.
For instance, I'll give you an example. If I'm stood in the kitchen and I'm making a drink and somebody goes to reach across me,
Yeah.
that straight away makes me jump back.
Absolutely. I get it. Yeah.
And that other person's like, "What's the matter with you? I ain't gonna do out to you." But it's that reaction that's still instilled
But
inside.
it takes a
Um,
loving partner to empathize,
understand,
yeah.
yeah,
But the two words,
to try and
yeah,
understand it.
the two words I love is empathizing and sympathizing. It's really no, it's trying to understand, sympathize, empathize, but it's for both parties. And I think that is the individual who has suffered or dealt with the domestic abuse. But I had my shed not with domestic abuse, but in terms of violence and hostile environments, and I always believe you have to give other people a chance. You cannot, otherwise life becomes a very, very dark kind of atmosphere forever. And I believe it's not. I'm not saying it's easy, and I clearly don't mean disrespect to anyone, but it's important to allow your heart to open up again and to give other people to other people, give other people a chance. Otherwise you will never experience any level of happiness or whatever happiness really means. But it's a two-way
Mm,
relationship, isn't it? It's being open, honest to the new partner, saying, okay, that's what I went through, and please understand and help me and support me to go through the trauma. But equally the partners no, this case you saying, well, no, give love a chance. The next man you meet might be, actually, guess what, the man of your life, be exactly the man that you as a woman would like to have in terms of trust or responsibility, whatever it is at the end. But I've always believed
mm,
whatever we go through in life, whatever it is, we can't define the future. It can't allow us to define us. Otherwise, that's not the purpose of life. I believe the life is our life is to be happy in a reasonable level, whatever happiness means. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I always will say to victim survivors that at some point you have got to find some sort of peace
You
with
have
it,
to.
because if you don't, it will just destroy the rest of your life
Exactly.
basically. And I think it is very, very tough because if you've already endured abuse, it is really hard to try and trust
Yeah.
again. But I'm not saying impossible, and rightly so, to keep your wits about you and recognize those red flags. But also, it's about trying to rationalize things as well. And when you have got PTSD, you can't rationalize things in the same way.
Yeah.
So everything is the worst case scenario of every situation, if that makes sense. And your mindset can go from 0 to 100 mile an hour
Yeah.
in seconds. And you're straight there at that worst case scenario. What if that happens though? If I do that, and then it's learning to try and recognize that and slow that thought process down. So when I was doing my recovery, I did a lot of meditation,
I did this.
a lot
I did the
of
same. Mm.
yeah, yeah, a lot of meditation. And a lot of people will say to me, I can't do it. I can't do it. Everybody that knows me knows that I am 100 mile an hour with my brain all the time. I'm waiting to be assessed for ADHD, but I am 99.9% sure I have got it. Um, and I think that, it's learning to give yourself that time to heal. You need to be able to process that and reprocess it and process it again and
Yeah.
reprocess it until eventually you find it clearer in your mind. But I found meditation for me, you know, you can do it, but it's like all else. If you're going to say, "Oh, it's rubbish. I can't do it. I can't do it." If you keep telling yourself you can't do something, then of course you're not going to do
Yeah.
it. You've got to keep your mind open to these things because they are very, very good for healing and healing trauma. And I always try and the way I explain meditation is your mind enters into a place that is clear, doesn't it? And it gives your mind that time to stop and rest. And it's like running a marathon. If you keep running a marathon and running and running and running, you're going to get exhausted. You can't run forever. And for me, that meditation time where there's nothing in my head and
Yeah.
just clear
Yeah.
thoughts, that's where it rests and it gets that time to heal. You're not going to be able to heal it if you're still running and running and running with it.
Yeah. I
And that's how I try and explain it to people.
I do exactly the same. I do it every single day, 7 days a week. I get a mat out under the olive trees. No, it sounds paradise. But I sit on the olive
Mm,
trees and probably not even that long, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And,
yeah,
and, and initially, it took me ages to get into this kind of state. And now I can probably enter the state within maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes. And I call
yeah,
it's helping me to reset. It's finding a new level of peace every single time. It's good
yeah,
for the healing. It's good for PTSD. It's just good for clarity. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
really important. It's like I call it almost like a spiritual house cleaning exercise. I mean, you can live in the most beautiful house in the world.
Mm,
If it's a mess, it's still a mess. And you can be in a house that's pretty basic, but if it's clean, it still feel clean. And I feel that my brain sometimes, historically even more so, it felt a mess. And meditation helps you to clean it, and it feels
mm,
good. When you look in your head, when you sort of look in your own inside, and you look at your brain, it feels clean, clear, healthy, and you've got it's sort
yeah.
of re-energized to tackle new kind of challenges life might throw at you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Nobody's suggesting either that, everything's gonna go away because you've started meditating. But it does give your mind is such a powerful
Ah, God,
thing, isn't
absolutely.
it?
Yeah,
And it does give it that chance to have a bit of a rest. And it does work wonders. And we at Resolute, we take more of that holistic approach as well. We use a lot of holistic therapies in our building because I do believe that it is the best way. The holistic way is the best way. So Reiki, massage, meditation, yoga, things like that is fantastic for healing.
yeah. I
Um,
think it's not.
I mean,
Go on. Sorry.
we are very, very limited to funding, but in an ideal world, we would love to be able to offer women that we support EMDR. So that's eye
Yeah.
movement
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
therapy. Um, and it's meant to be brilliant for trauma.
Yeah. 100%
I've had
is.
some really, really good
A lot.
feedback.
A lot of
Yeah,
ex-military personnel are using it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And but the waiting list on the NHS is
Yeah.
like
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
forever.
Yeah. But I think it's.
And in an ideal world, we would love to be able to offer that to women that we
I
support.
think it's marginal gains. I don't think there's any kind of magic recipe to fix trauma. It doesn't exist. But what I know, one of my favorite terminology is marginal gains. It's an algorithm and a combination of several things. And now one of the things, without any question, is the holistic approach you just mentioned. But I think even just talking to individuals, just talking. Now,
Mhm,
I, when you asked me early on briefly, I didn't answer the question. What got me into this whole subject? And there's several aspects, several stories, several moments in my life that triggered it. So one of the earliest stages was in year 2000. So when I came to UK and I met this absolutely gorgeous young lady who was absolutely loved in that village. Now she was kind, she was energetic, she was vibrant, happy, a great sense of humor. Everybody loved her. She was everyone's sweetheart. And she introduced me to the mountaineering, and I got heavily involved in mountaineering subsequently. But never mind. And I once, I mean, literally within the first few days of us meeting each other, we were actually still strangers. Um, my wife always calls me Mr. Gestapo because if I want to know something, I will find out. I mean, I know it's wrong on every level, the single level, but my wife calls me. So if there's anything in the house, chocolate presents, I will find out way before that. It's just now because what I do. So I asked that young lady at the time, after a few days we met the first time, and she was a stranger, how are you? And she said, I'm all right. And I said, ask her again, how are you? Are you really okay? She said, yeah. Yeah, why? And I literally asked her a third time. And I remember for the rest of my life that the day when we started developing our relationship, and ultimately she told me the story that she survived rape following being given a date rape drug, Rohypnol, at the time. And we spent 3 years together, and I found out a lot about her. Not about It wasn't really about the incident. What I was intrigued about. I was intrigued about her as a human being. And what I've learned, and that is now back to what you just said about healing, and that 20 years later, her own mother doesn't know about what happened. Her best friend doesn't know
mm,
what happened. And she's
mm,
got a young adult daughter who doesn't know what happened.
mm,
And at that time, it just shocked me and fascinated me in a way. It clearly shocked me even more because when I wrote my book, and I didn't know if I can talk about that story and my experience with her. And so I kept it very, very vague in the books not to be able to identify her for others. But what I found so shocking is there's a lady now, a young, beautiful woman, that 20 years later is still an actress in a way, who pretends to the outside world that she's a happy, lovely, bubbly person everybody loves, and nobody has got an idea what actually is going on really in her heart and her soul. Nobody will know. Even now, nobody knows. 20 or over more than 20 years later, what nightmares she's suffering at nighttime, or
mm,
if she's in a loving relationship, and I haven't asked him, I reconnected with her literally 17 years later, only like 2, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, I reconnected to speak with her briefly. And her partner, if she has got a partner, I don't know. How can you adapt and understand how to respond in certain situations when she's reacting in a certain way because of PTSD or because of trauma? It's sort of really, and that was one of the trigger points of sort of now one of the catalysts for me to get further and further involved in the subject. So when you said, yes, the holistic approach, I wholeheartedly agree with that. But I do believe it's absolutely essential that we speak to other individuals, other people, whoever it may be. It may be a support organization, it might be a counselor, it might be a family member, it might be a best friend. It doesn't matter who it is. But I have witnessed no, some of the most horrific acts of violence a human can witness. And I would have never, ever found any level of happiness ever without at some point sitting down with someone and saying, listen, hang on, I need to talk, and talk for hours and days and weeks or months or to get it off your chest. And that is the beginning of your
mm,
recovery. So when we talk about
mhm,
recovery, I think no, it's just speaking to people you trust is absolutely of profound importance. And that person needs to listen without judgment. The person needs to listen and indicate strongly
yeah,
that the person genuinely believes what the person is telling. The person needs to empathize
mm,
and sympathize. So it's difficult to
mm.
find that person. I get it, but it is important to find that person. I do.
That's why our support groups are so good, because we've all got lived experience,
Yeah,
so we 100% get it. When you're talking to somebody that hasn't experienced it, they can't understand it because it is so
yeah,
complex. And I use alcohol as a coping mechanism, and I ended up becoming alcohol dependent. And when I came out of hospital, my caseworker had lived experience, and I tried a couple of times previous to that and failed, relapsed. But because he just got me to a T, he just got me to a
yeah,
T, and it didn't matter what I told him. He didn't judge me. It didn't shock him. And he was, and that is the only way I think that I would have opened
yeah,
up, is to somebody that understands how hard it is to recover from. I were recovering from alcoholism, domestic abuse, um, and it was really hard, really, really hard, because the alcoholism came from as a result of the domestic abuse that were
yeah,
happening. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that as well. I think that it is, when they have got lived experience, they will open up more. They will open up more, and they will get it off the chest, and they want to talk for hours. And, you know, and a lot of times they will compare what's happened to them, and it'll be like, oh my God, yeah, you used to say that to me. And it's like, it's almost that validation that they need
yeah,
to be able to think, my God, this isn't just happened to me. It's happening to others as well that understand it. And I think that's really important for a lot of women.
yeah. I 100% agree. And another thing that I think is important is that when individuals have experienced violence or abuse and move on, I mean, in this case, either escape or leave that relationship and start again. I think for me, it's really important that 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 we surround ourselves by individuals who who give us this kind of energy, and peace. Are you still there? Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Okay, well, sure.
absolutely.
That we surround ourselves, but with the right people, I guess. So, for example, and again, it's
Yeah,
another story, and that's my favorite story I could tell you ever in my entire life. It's a very, very short story. It's the most powerful story for me ever. Has changed my life forever. And without that story, I probably wouldn't be around. So, in the late '90s, when I sort of finished working for the German government and different things, I wasn't in a good place when I came to UK. Hence, I moved to the North Yorkshire and Yorkshire Dales to sort of be on my own, find some peace, and fight what I call my demons in my head at the time. But before I came to UK, when I came actually UK, I was actually seeking treatment and seeking help for my PTSD and different things. And that lady told me a story, a very short story. It's the shortest story ever, and it just really like it made boom. I've told the story thousands of times since. So the story goes that two American Indians around the fireplace, a father and a son. And the son is realizing the father is in a good place. The father clearly has got things going on in his head that is seriously, seriously bothering him. So the son on the fire asks his father, Father, no, what is going on with you? The father said to his son, you know, I have a constant battle in my head, a constant battle. And the battle is between the angels and the demons. And the son asked him, okay, who's winning that fight? And that answer that lady gave me changed my life. She said, the father said to the son, the one I'm feeding. And it really is true. If you are in an abusive
Mm,
relationship, for example, in or after, it's almost irrelevant. But clearly, even more so when during a abusive relationship, if you only listen to the demons, i.e., that partner was telling you constantly in whatever kind of psychological advanced manipulative ways or through violence or whatever is at the end that you are useless and worthless and whatever. And if you listen to that, then clearly you're going to feel X, Y, Z, understandably, respectfully, I mean it. But if you understand the concept of the story I've just said, and you actually surround yourself at work whenever you can without, without triggering any kind of further violence. But if you have a partner, a best friend, or if you have a sister, or a colleague, or a neighbor, or a mother, it doesn't matter, a family member, and that person actually, now it's important that the person is the angel, and that these people are the angels, because the more you listen to the angels, the higher the chance you got to win that fight. And that fight is about your happiness, about your self-esteem, it's about confidence, it's a sense of life, meaning of life, sense of self-worth,
mm,
thousands of things. But I think one of the most important advice I've learned in my life that became very clinical about who I have around my life and anyone, and I mean regrettably, that includes family, by the way. If I have family members by my side who I don't feel give me what I need or what I want or what I deserve, then I just don't speak. Now, I can tell you on my own wedding now that very, very close family members when I invited to my wedding. Because I said to my wife, why
mm,
do I want to share this most important day of my life with, it doesn't matter who they are, if your mother, father, it's irrelevant, who
mm,
don't express an interest in me and in us and in you. So
mm,
I've learned that I've said it to so many people, and then I surround myself with only the people who tell me how good I am, how kind I am, how whatever it is, and your self confidence, your self esteem, your sense of self worth will go through the roof. But you
mm.
gotta find these angels, and you gotta listen to the angels. You know what I mean? You can't. If you're in an
Yeah,
abusive relationship, you can't shut this demon up for whatever reason. It might be physically or mentally or whatever impossible. You might be blubbering on this demon, but as long as you've got angels at the same time, you've got a fair chance of making it, you know?
yeah. That's a really good way that describing, because when our members are resolute, when we're all together, it's like we'll say, "You've found your tribe."
Yeah,
We come together as one, and I totally agree. I think any sort of negative energies in your world, then eradicate them,
absolutely.
because if they're making you feel positive and good about yourself, then why would you want them around
It's
you?
counter it's counter
But I think,
it's counterproductive for you. It's
yeah,
counterproductive for your recovery. If you talk about trauma, if you're talking about dealing with trauma and recovering from this trauma, you need angels, you need good people, and you literally need to eliminate negativity. You know what I mean? It's
hmm,
hard work
yeah,
without anyone. It's hard work to recover from trauma anyway. but you significantly increase your chances if you surround yourself by good human beings who make you feel good, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Agree. Totally agree. Um. So, so you is that why you went into this line of work then, Robert? From having that relationship with that
There was
lady?
several things happening. Literally several things that all happened around during my life, and just too many stories to mention, to be really honest. But what happened really when I lived in Paisley Bridge, I did some cracking stuff. I swam across the biggest reservoir there in the middle of the winter at -4 degrees, surrounded in snow. People thought I was crazy because that's what I do. Man. I go to Greenland and for a month on my own with literally but no human beings aside for hundreds of miles. That's what I do, and I still do it every morning. Go running for an hour and just to find my peace.
Yeah.
And and people figured out pretty quickly that I was different to the average person in the Yorkshire Dales, I guess. And then one morning actually, sorry, one evening actually was uh, in a cafe, in a local cafe, and I was approached by a lady called Jackie Jackson at that stage, and she was in charge of the department that dealt with physical disabilities at Leeds City Councils. And and she asked me a question because I was doing some unique training there, and people understand. It was a small village. People understood that there's something about me, I guess. And then she asked if I would be interested in teaching some type of self-defense for physically disabled individuals. I had no idea of the concept how that would work, but I said, I'm in. I'm loving it. Just helping people to be safe, whatever that means. And she gave me a bit of a background
Yeah.
story. Basically, there was a gentleman in a wheelchair, and three guys turned up and grabbed him with a wheelchair and put him on a railway track. And that was caused on CCTV. He was rescued clearly before the train arrived. And da da da. And I was asked to do an event on a Tuesday evening. I will remember it vividly and speak with him. And I spoke to them, and we talked about self-defense. But the way I talk about self-defense is very, very different to, I think, anybody you will know, or most anybody will know. I don't talk about self-defense in any way and at all about martial arts or anything that requires training. I talk about, with my background, self-defense is based on one single concept only, and that is based on human anatomy. And I've always said that if you grunt your thumb into someone's eye, he's not going to look at you. If you break someone's knee, he's not going to run after you. If you break someone's finger, he's not going to punch you or strangle you. And if you cut someone's artery, he's going to bleed out, and he's not going to assault you either. So it's a very that none of the things. If I apologize if I'm too brutal here, what I was saying is none of that needs training or martial arts or needs any belt. It's just if I can tell you something right now within 10 seconds, and that 100% will save your lives if you are able to execute that. But it's just very, very simple because it's not based on training. It's based on human anatomy. A human being can only cope with X amount of pain. I understand they can cope with a lot of
Mhm.
pain, but there are limitations to it. And if I break a knee,
Mhm.
he can't run. It's not, I keep saying, if you grind someone's thumb into someone's eye, that's the end of the story. So I saw those individuals all physically disabled. I knew there's no point of talking now about some dance moves and spinning kicks and God knows what have you. So I spoke to them about very simple things, and they were blown away. And then it just triggered something. Then BBC Look North turned up, and an ITV calendar. So there was one Tuesday evening that turned to ultimately a 12-week scenario. So then again, BBC Look North, ITV calendar, God knows what have you. And then ultimately I got a call from Trish and from Kilroy, and I was on national television every week talking about serious kind of aspects of protecting yourself. And and then I got involved with Women's Aid and different kind of domestic violence organizations in the UK. And I'm not saying they're right or wrong, by the way. It's just what I did. I can tell you this now. So I was very passionate about I've always been passionate about individuals who I believe deserve to gain some knowledge that may well be one day's life saving. I've never taught any blokes or people who want to be better street fighters. I've got zero interest in it. All my businesses are based around saving lives and mitigating risks. Okay,
Mm.
and yeah, so I got a call, and then I did different things, and ultimately I I I, I was supporting a lot of women when they went to court So I and some of my team members, we went with them to court to give them some level of physical presence and some physical support to make them feel less intimidated in the presence of the abuser.
Mhm.
But ultimately,
Yeah.
it's too many years ago. But ultimately, no, I made it my job to retrieve any essential documentation, and that means passport, birth certificate, and a bank account access. And often under the mission or motto, no matter what, because I realized that when I dealt with individuals, how complicated their path moving forward was, because they didn't have access to the banks, they didn't have birth
Yeah.
certificates, they didn't have a passport. And I took it upon myself, breaking every law in the world, not exaggerating, to recover any document, no matter what, to enable those individuals to start again in a way. And that's a long, long time ago. We talk about
Yeah.
20 years ago. So I don't mind sharing this information. And ultimately, I could see what difference you can make in a human's soul by seeing the light again. Because there were moments when the woman said,
Yeah.
I can't. I have escaped not domestic abuse, but I've got no way of starting a meaningful life. I've got no passport, no birth certificate, no bank access, no medication, no whatever, no mortgage documents, whatever it's going to be. And I thought, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it for you. And you could see that was the moment when they started living again, because then they realized suddenly there actually is light and life can be good again.
Yeah.
Answering some of
Yeah.
them,
And how did you get it though?
that it doesn't
How did you
matter.
how did you Is that a secret?
Well, whatever it took. I think that
Yeah.
I at
Yeah.
that time, rightly, wrongly, and it's not about right or wrong. It's not me to judge me. For me at the time was my priority. And it's very pride in
Yeah.
it, and it doesn't matter ultimately. I mean, for me, I did the right thing for the right people, for the right individuals, and it doesn't matter what.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about right and
Yeah.
wrong from the
Well,
legal point of view. Sometimes it's about right or wrong as far as your moral compass are concerned. So I've got my moral compass, and my moral
yeah.
compass tells me what is right or wrong. And sometimes it's not necessarily right what the government tells me. It's right in that moment for me or my loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get that. And sometimes I will put myself out there on a limb when I have to, um, sort of stick up for the
Yeah,
women that we support, because ultimately nobody wants to take any accountability for failings.
exactly.
So, and when they're dealing with women that are so vulnerable, it's quite easy just to sort of fob them off, and
Yeah,
I will not allow
yeah,
that. And I think it is about being a bit brave and sort of challenging the police, challenging a
absolutely,
social worker,
absolutely.
challenging a solicitor, because ultimately they are, there are a lot of there's a lot of good ones, but there's also a
Oh
lot
God, yeah,
of bad ones. Um, and I will not stand by and let women be fobbed
yeah.
off by their failings, if you like. And that's what we do. We will hold them accountable, because ultimately, if laws aren't being implemented, then what chance have they got?
I think you're 100%. You're 100% right with that. I think the time has come, and I think we are heading in the right direction, without any doubt. The time has come to literally say enough is enough, and to raise voices and take actions and God, what
Yeah,
have you. And I think what happened in France and Paris with Giselle and Pellico, and now you know the story as well as I know. A wife, a woman who was raped by 50 different men, while she was drugged by her own husband. It's, I think that woman is so inspiring in terms of saying, the shame shouldn't be with the victim or the survivor. It should be with the perpetrator without any question. And I think,
exactly.
and I think
Exactly.
this message has to go out. I think now there's so many domestic abuse survivors in an abusive relationship right now, and one major reason that prevents them from leaving or escaping is the risk they see that they may not be believed. Yeah, I mean, it could be shame that people are going to point the finger. the fact it could split, family relationships apart, the financial risks, etc. There are so many reasons why women don't take this important step and saying, and no, don't be in this kind of environment where your life may well be at risk. I think it's important that we empower women to say, you can do it. You can do it. And you can deal with the
Mm.
aftermath. For Giselle Pilico, it kind of been easy to say, you know what? I'll tell you exactly what happened here. There were 50 men who raped me in the middle of the night. I saw the videos, not happy about it. That's not the average person in the street who does that. And that's really powerful. And I think if more women
Mm.
step forward, th- I, 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 I
Yeah.
genuinely believe there is help out there. That it may be an organization, it
Yeah.
might be a family member, it might be a friend, it might be someone you don't even know right now. Like, look back to the situation or the experience that I made with this young lady in North Yorkshire, and the fact that her own mother, her own daughter, her best friend does know it, and I know, and that's not the the fact she didn't know 3, 4 days before that she will tell this story, but ultimately she found someone to share the story with. And I genuinely believe that has significantly improved her chance to find some level of happiness, just to get it off your chest, with someone. Um,
Yeah.
and I think the responsibility lies literally with everyone.
It's a very, very, very big
Uh,
burden to carry into
Absolutely.
for the rest of your
Absolutely.
life, and to carry that burden
And somebody
on your
And
own.
some of these ladies are literally in their early 20s. When let me mention for a second, you become 90 years old. There's seven decades. There's 7 centuries. There's 3 generations of keeping a secret, on being a different person from your further future partner, grandchildren, grandchildren. It's just not
Mm.
worth it, in my opinion. And like that's not what life is about. You rather, and that's what,
I
again, back
know.
to Giselle Pilico in Paris. It's just saying, you know what? I do it and I deal with the aftermath. I can deal with whatever the aftermath is. I genuinely believe for human beings, and women have proven it over and over again in human history, how strong and resilient they can be. There's no question about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've always believed. Same with self-defense. People say, yeah, but man is stronger, and if he's intoxicated and drunk, and he's a big guy and a rugby player, who cares? You can be 5 foot tall and 7 stone, and you can still deal with that. It's all about gaining a bit of knowledge, learning a little bit, reading up on a bit of information. But I
Yeah.
genuinely wholeheartedly believe that every single woman in the world has got the innate ability to stay safe and protect herself. I really genuinely believe that. You know?
Mm.
But
Yeah.
a woman,
I think again, it all boils down to education,
absolutely,
doesn't it? And we've just created an e-learning platform, but we need to be able to. So shortly after Christmas, I'm hoping that's going to be ready to start distributing. Um, hopefully, hopefully, it'd be amazing if it were global. Um, because it is our own lived experiences as well. So it's real lives. And I think it has a better impact because it's not read from statistics.
absolutely.
And I'm 100% with you there, Robert. Statistics are, they're not a true reflection
No,
of
no,
reality. Um and I think that when it is real, it has a different impact. It seems to resonate, and it stays with people.
yeah,
They remember it. They remember that story. They remember that
absolutely,
case. And I did some training for ambulance crew last year, and they were just like in tears, some of them, because they just could not believe. And sometimes I take that for granted a little bit because I forget, because I'm that sort of live, eat, and breathe it kind of thing. I automatically think that everybody knows what coercive control is. Everybody
yeah,
knows what
no,
love bombing is. Everybody knows what signs to look for.
yeah.
And they genuinely really do
No, I
not
agree. I
know
agree.
what these issues. And I think that what we want to try and do is build on that
Yeah,
training, on that e-learning platform, and keep distributing it so that there is a training platform for lived lived experience, for instance. that have gone through the family court so that they can see the devastating impacts that some of these women have been left with.
Yeah.
Um, so we do want to keep building on that. But yeah, I think a lot of it is
Uh,
educating
the mo
people.
the most empowering thing is absolutely informing women in abusive relationships, what, giving them solutions, No, if you have psychological issues in terms of confidence, whatever it is, there's psychological help out there. If you've got financial issues because your partner is controlling your finances, there is financial help out there. If you don't know where to go because your family and your friends hate you, there are support organizations out there who on housing might be possible. There's always a solution for every single problem. I've learned that in my life over and over again. It doesn't matter what the problem is, there's always a solution. Yeah, and that's why I mean statistics mean nothing. I don't think in going on about statistics like a lot of people do. It has got no. That's not empowering. And not knowledge, free knowledge, information is empowering. I did a podcast only a few
Yeah.
days ago with a lady, and we talked about and she asked me about statistics, and I thought because I've got an intelligence background, I thought I'm very very cautious when it comes to numbers. Like that, when people talk about this country XYZ has an increase of rape by 25% of reported rape, I thought, how do you make up this figure? Because it's like, okay, what if that country has decided last year and but under a new law to make it easier for rape victims or survivors to report? That number is going up.
Mm,
What if it's a new
mm,
government where the police is more being forced to investigate violence more thoroughly? That will increase a level of trust with victim survivors, and again will improve their chance or increase their chances of coming forward to
mm,
make to explain this situation. Now, if more support services are being given more money by the government, that means there's more help available for women, and that will encourage them to come forward. But all of that will increase to a greater number. It doesn't mean you had more
mm.
victims. It just means you have enabled more individuals to come forward.
Yeah.
So I never get
Mm,
fooled by any numbers. The numbers have got no impact on how I feel about certain things unless you can literally back them up by whatever means necessary. But in terms of help
mm.
and support and healing is concerned, it's all about knowledge is power. You know, if
Yeah,
the
it is.
majority of women don't leave an abusive relationship because they, for themselves, on their specific circumstances, have identified a very clear problem. And the only way we encourage that individual to leave is by showing her that that problem can be solved by whatever action or strategy. That's the only way, not by giving her
Mm,
any numbers of whatever victims or survivors in the country. It's literally
yeah,
offering solutions, and there is no problem
yeah,
that can't be solved. I don't believe it.
yeah. It's been, do you know what, Robert? It's been really, really good speaking
Nice,
to you
nice talking
today.
to you.
And I hope you've
Oh,
enjoyed
I
this
did.
podcast because I
Absolutely.
have. Yeah, it's been really interesting. And can you do me a favor?
Okay.
Will you keep in
Oh,
touch?
absolutely. Yeah, 100%. At the beginning of a conversation, I said to my wife early on, it's like, it's always the first 5 minutes, isn't it? Because I don't know, you could have had a bad day, you could have some issues going on in your life today, whatever, stress, appointments, dentist. I don't
I've
know.
always got
So you,
issues going on.
so you never know, and what kind of mood or how no h- what kind of connection you're gonna have with the person you're gonna meet on the other end of the video call.
Yeah,
But I'm no,
yeah.
yeah, I genuinely enjoyed it. That was a real pleasure talking to you. Yeah, it could have continued forever. Very good.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, we'll do if it's all right with you. We could do another one
Yeah,
and
of course.
catch back up in
Whenever you
future.
want. Yeah.
Um, and what's your book called, Robert?
Never a victim. The definitive guide to women's safety. Thank you for mentioning it.
Right. We will put it on a link on the
I
podcast
appreciate
so
it.
that people
I
know
appreciate it.
where to get that
Thank
from.
you very
And
much.
also, you know the link that you sent me to the piece that you did. I bet you can't remember now,
I
but
remember the piece, but I can't remember the link.
can you remember? Yeah. I'd like to put that on our
Whatever you
website or
like.
on a link on the podcast. Is that
I'll be
okay?
honored. Yeah, I would much appreciate it.
Thank
Generally,
you.
yeah.